Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Trickster. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we get to finally see what the Tricksters look like, I guess, in their natural form. Once again, we're still unclear about what that whole thing is, because it seems like Wade is able to look the way he does, but it seemed like the other three, it seemed like they're kind of falling apart. In particular, Georgina, like it seems like she's falling apart more so than anybody. So I guess because it seemed like they're more so like they wear people's skin to shift, but then it seems like Wade's situation is different. I don't know whether like maybe I don't know. Like, maybe it's like no matter what they shift into, they always kind of have to shed his skin. But once again, it's like, then why does Wade still look like the way he did, even though he quote-unquote died like 17 years ago? There's so many questions in that regard. But obviously, you have Jarrett trying to figure everything out. He's struggling with the whole, well, for one, he thinks he's going a little crazy, which adds more fuel to the fire. Is his mom's crazy, so when he's seeing what's happening to himself, he's thinking he's going crazy, and he's kind of worried that, maybe it's the same thing that happened to his mom, that he's going to kind of be in the same situation as his mom. Obviously, still trying to figure out the whole Wade situation of like, how handling like, for 17 years he thought Phil was his dad, and now it turns out, this dude that just popped into your life is actually your dad, and coming to terms with that, which Wade is coming to terms with the fact is Maggie tried to kill him again. And she came to try and with the shotgun, I guess, to come finish him off. But by the time she got there, it's like, nope, he's already going. And the voices she's talking to is like, I know, I need to get it done. Later on, she explains like the voices are telling her to kill him, which we still don't even know what that voices thing is. It seemed like even her mom, which we get introduced to her this episode, Sophia, we don't even know. It doesn't seem like even she knows what. Maybe even what whatever their circumstances is, which we'll get into. Maybe even with that, like, what Maggie's whole situation, it seems like maybe it's still a special case even amongst their circumstances, because even her mom's like, I wish you had told me sooner about it. But which that's an interesting thing, like the dynamic between Maggie and her mom, because we kind of learned that like history kind of repeats itself. Like Maggie's a lot of like what she's doing, kind of drinking and just kind of not being the best mom of the year. To be fair, she's got her own issues, but it seems like it's a repeat of like, because her mom was literally the same. So it's like, sadly, history was kind of repeating itself. So it's like her mom's issues kind of came down to her. Plus, I think everything, the weight of being what they are, as Wade kind of explains later on the witches, which I was like, because that was the thing I could never quite figure out. I brought it up before, was like the way she was like, what are you? So I was like, okay, so obviously you're not a normal human because the way you were able to kill Wade, but it's still not knowing what he was. So it's like, whatever you are, you're different from Wade, but it turns out they're witches, which makes them a lot more human than what he is as a trickster. So that was interesting. But regardless of that, like her mom, because she said her mom hasn't seen Jared in 10 years. So I guess she was still dealing with her own issues back then. So it's like, I couldn't even be, not really in a position to be a mom. So definitely couldn't be a grandmother at the time, but she's trying to, fix things, which I think that's the parallel they're going for too. Like while Wade and Jarrett, well, at least Wade's trying to get closer to Jarrett, you have Sophia kind of trying to make up for the past, and obviously Maggie still kind of has a lot of resentment towards her. I mean, it's probably because the whole complicated thing she had, her relationship with Jarrett, it's probably why she's probably even more resentful to her mom, because it's like, because of your baggage and BS, it led to me having my own baggage and BS, and it's complicated my relationship with my son and, put me in the circumstances that I am right now. Which, when you break that all down, obviously, so that means, his mom being a witch and his dad being a trickster. Currently where things stand, it seemed like Jarrett's taking more after Wade than he is his mom, but maybe like if she kind of taught him some things, maybe the witch side of things would probably kick in more. But obviously, I guess it's just, maybe he's just at that age where the, trickster is kind of coming out a little bit more. I mean, it seemed like Wade more so than anything is trying to, because I guess he knows it's about that time where Wade's coming into being a trickster, because he's trying to make more of a point of being around. And to me, that's the interesting thing. It's like there's obviously he wants something. Granted, he was trying to kidnap Wade. I mean, Wade was trying to kidnap Jarrett when he was a kid. So we don't know what that is. But whatever it is, like the others are mixed in with it and being like, if that is his kid, then we have everything we need, which is like, I guess Wade as a trickster was supposed to bring back the baby and be like, oh, maybe it's part of some like sacrificial ritual or whatever. Maybe it's about making them complete. Maybe they kind of lost a little luster of what they were and they're trying to reclaim it, and Jarrett's like a sacrifice necessary. But it seems like maybe Wade isn't all about that anymore. Maybe at one point in time, all those years ago, he was, but maybe some kind of form of humanity has creeped into him subsequently since, and now he actually does want to get to know his son. I mean, for all we know, maybe he's actually been watching Jarrett the entire time just from afar, but decided now's the time. Maybe he saw that Jarrett was kind of awakening to his abilities. Like, now's the time I can be there for my son. There's 17 years we don't know like what Wade's been through, and have the others always been around this entire time, or did Wade cross paths with them in that 17-year time frame? Because whatever it is, like I said, it seemed like a sacrificial type of thing that Wade kind of backed out from, because he didn't go like, yeah, that's my son, because I guess the others didn't know he had a son. They speculate, at least Georgina was kind of speculating, but she didn't know for sure. So, but like I said, it's like he's coming off like he is trying to be a father. Like, it isn't just like, oh, a ploy or an act. It does seem like he's genuinely trying to be a father. And, him showing up at Jarrett's school and it's like, yeah, the bike's totaled, so I can't take you on a ride. He's like, man, are you okay? He's like, yeah, none of the little R&R won't heal. But it's like, yeah, have you seen your mom? No, why? Well, she tried to kill me. It's like, wait, what? She ran me off the road. It's like, why? My mom wouldn't do that. Like, it's like, and for him, it's like, yeah, me and your mom, we got basically a hint. It was almost twisted the way he was kind of painting it. Like, it's like, oh, that, that's passion. He's like, me and your mom still got it bad for each other. And he was like, love makes you do stupid things. I'm like, I don't know whether you seriously think of that as love. It's like, oh, she tried to kill me again. Aren't we quite the pair? I'm like, really? Or is he trying to be a little like, is that supposed to be like a little facetious? I barely got that word out. Jeez, I need to stop using words I can't say on the first try because I'm going to stumble a lot of times. But I'm wondering how he meant that. He seemed like he was joking, but part of me was almost like, does he actually really believe that? Because it did seem like when they ran into each other at that, pool table and everything last episode, it almost seemed like she was almost got that look like, man, I forgot why I was kind of into you. And then she had to remind herself, it's like, no, the voices say you need to die. I needed to keep you away from my son. Yeah. So she kind of, that's why I'm like, it does seem like she herself seems like she's kind of conflicted in a certain regard. But, I think he even feels bad about the whole Phil situation because Jarrett's like, yeah, my dad, he wasn't always like that. And Wade's like, oh, no, I know. It's like not being able to provide for your family, kind of feeling a little less than like a man. Like, it does something to you. And it's also like, so what am I supposed to do? Tell my dad the truth? It's like, are you going to tell him? It's like, no. Should I tell him? You want me to tell him? It's like, no, your mom should be the one to do it. She created this tangled ball situation. She should be the one that ends up kind of carrying that. Because for Jarrett, he doesn't want to break his dad because, his dad's like, oh, his dad got drunk. He was like, oh, I love you. He's like, oh, I don't deserve a son like you and everything. And you see that look on Wade's face almost just kind of like, because I think he feels bad because like, Phil is his buddy, but also at the same time, this is his son, and probably hearing that just kind of makes him hurt a little because it's like, yeah, you were there for my son when I wasn't able to. Even the conversation he had with Sarah being like, oh, should I back down? Should I cool off? Because he's like, I don't know if I, and it's like he's asking questions, it's like, because he, like I said, he's trying to make a actual effort with it. He is trying to, he might have his own like reasons, but it like I said earlier, it seems at the very least it seems sincere. But that once again could all be an act and a ploy. We'll have to wait and see in that regard. But I also didn't talk about it. There's a whole Richie kicking Jarrett out situation. I love him pulling out the sword out and everything. And then it's like, the blade's not even real. And then it's like, yeah, if you hurt me or anything, my mom would, you'd be done. And then he like hits him with the butt of the, hits him with the hilt of the sword. I was like, Jesus. But is literally throwing his stuff out of the house when Jarrett shows up. He's like, well, you were serious? He's like, I'm always serious. And you're like, Richie, why you gotta be such a dick? I mean, I get you and the kid don't vibe together. It's almost kind of like, yeah, me and your mom, but it's like, once again, the lady you were threatening to kill and leave in a ditch, you're all good. And, Jarrett, tired of his Richie's BS, ends up calling the cops on him. And he's like, yeah, I want to report an arson. And it's like, well, I mean, that's kind of your fault, Richie, for pushing him too far. But I almost feel bad for Richie because Richie was like, whoa, you okay? Like, what's going on? He's like, do you ever, and, Jared's like, do you ever feel like, something's can't be real, but it turns out it is? And he's like, okay, and he's concerned for him because he sees Jared just like knocking back beers. And he's like, okay, you can stay here for another. I was like, oh my God, look at Richie being a little sympathetic. And then like the cops show up and he's like, oh, you're done, big guy. I was like, dude, that's sad because you could tell Jared's almost like, oh, that sucks. If you weren't such a piece of shit to me earlier, this situation wouldn't have happened this way. Because I was like, oh, he was actually being a little concerned. And it was like, oh, we've seen him being actually caring and not just a total tool. But it's like, oh, if you just weren't an asshole from the beginning, this could have been better. But it's like, well, now things are going to be a little, it's also like your mom didn't, you've been trying to get in contact with your mom the entire time, but I guess she's kind of going off the grid because it's like, well, I don't need to be in contact with anyone while I'm trying to kill Wade. But it's still like, yeah, could have prevented this whole thing. It's kind of on you for bringing Richie into, you're working with him to do the whole arson and get the insurance money. It kind of brought this upon yourselves, and now Jarrett's the one that has to pay the price because you weren't around. I'm curious if she's going to be mad when she comes back and she's like, whoa, where's Richie? Yeah, Richie got arrested. What? I reported him. So like, why would you, so that it's like, you weren't here, Mom. I had to deal with all this on my own. He was kicking me out and everything. It's like, no, it would have been fine. I would have come back. It would have all been okay. Because at least Richie was like, yeah, you're skidding out until your mom gets back. So it's like, hey, at least he was being... I was literally about to say the word sensible. No, there's no sensibility in that. But he was trying to be, in his own way, reasonable. So, it's sad that that's his version of being reasonable. But, yeah. But some other stuff, circling back to the Wade thing, when he was drinking with Jared, and he gave him that one last shot. He's like, oh yeah, it's kind of my own thing. And then like Jared was kind of stumbling. I'm like, oh, he did something to you in that drink. But then like afterwards, Jared went to the bathroom and he looked and his eyes shifted. So I guess Wade was trying to like get whatever's in him to come out of, like, I guess whatever it is, like lower his subconscious so that like he's no longer like holding it back, kind of like basically limber him up so that he can kind of just let go and let it come. And because he was like, unlock the door, because he's probably like, whatever you're going through, I want to be there for you. But Jared ended up like passing out in the tub. So it's like, well, he didn't say anything, so I'll just, he's trying to take it slow. He's not trying to rush into the whole like, you're a trickster. It's like, well, it's that thing of like, I kind of want you to, very similar to another comparison to make would be like American Gods, like the whole Wednesday and Shadow situation. You kind of got to lead him into it. He needs to come to the realization on his own. That's the whole part of, maybe there is an element of belief, because it's like, well, if you just come out just like, what? No, you're crazy. My trickster? What? No. But it's like, oh, let it build up. Granted, it went from it went from like 0 to 30, and then it went from 30 to 100 with everything that went down, like the whole Georgina thing. And it's like, oh yeah, you were on the bike with Wade. He was like, Wade? It's like, yeah, me and your dad, we go way back. And it's like, he's like, oh, you got a heavy foot. She's like, yeah, it's, makes me feel young again. But how do you know Wade? It's like, he's my dad's friend. I forgot what she was saying, but then she says Jared. He was like, wait, how do you know my name? And he looked at her and he saw her skin crawling. He was like, whoa. And she's like, wait, you can see me? And I was like, because that makes me wonder about that beginning part when they were digging, whichever one it was that was digging through the trash. Maybe it was Georgina, maybe it was the two. But it's the reason why he was able to see it like that isn't because they're out and about in their skin. Like, is that what they really, really look like all the time? But because like I said, they got the skin suit situation, because we saw them cleaning a skin suit last episode. So I'm so curious to know like how that works. Like I'd assume they're Trickster, but maybe there's something else. That could be what that is. Maybe that's what that's implying. Like, he's a trickster, but they aren't shapeshifters. That they are another creature pretending to be humans, wearing human flesh. Kind of like, like a Men in Black type of situation. Maybe it's kind of similar to that. And he's only trickster, but they themselves are something else entirely. Maybe they're not tricksters. Maybe there's some other supernatural creatures of this, mythology. Her showing up at his school like that. And I love that moment. His bud is like, what? He's like, dude, that's her. He's like, what? Dude, that's just someone's auntie. And he turns, and Jared's going, and he turns, and all the ladies going, and he puts on that little thing from Sarah's protest that she's doing. And he's like, he's got this look on his head like, on his face like, what the hell just happened? This is freaky. This is scary. Which is so interesting because obviously, once again, that still ends up being a storyline because even Sophia is dealing with that because it's like, well, these are stakes letting, kind of showing where like the pipelines are going to run through like her home. And she's like, she pulls the stakes up and burn them. It's like, that's not going to stop it. But it's like, yeah, but I'm not going to let them kind of do their thing without a fight. This is my way of resisting. I'm letting them know it's not going to be easy if they want to set up their pipelines here. But obviously, Sarah's kind of fighting for that, which I even love that moment with Jarrett, where she's like, "What are you fighting for specifically?" He was like, there's so much. She's like, "Oh," and she's like, "Oh my god." But yeah, Georgina is about to attack him, but then like Wade shows up as a crow or a raven. I'm assuming it's a crow, and ends up transforming back in front of Jarrett. Jarrett's like, "Wait, what?" So now he's trying to explain that to Jarrett, and it's like, Jarrett feels like he's losing his damn mind and going crazy. It's like, this can't be real. But, Wade finally tells him, I've been meaning to try and tell. He's like, wait, so that was you messing with me? He was like, yeah, but that was me trying to get to know you in my own way. I started thinking this might be the case when early in the episode, he was fixing Wade pancakes. He's like, how do you know what I like, that these are my favorite? I was like, because he shifted into you. And I was like, and he's like, yeah, that was me getting to know you my own way. So it's like, by shape shifting into someone, it seems like they automatically download everything that's like, I think that's why they have to probably be in like close enough proximity to basically download not only your appearance, but everything there is to know about you. So when he was at the party pretending to be Wade, kind of messing with him, it was him trying to that was him by becoming you, he got to know you. So, because he was saying like, oh yeah, Phil told me about it, which part of me was wondering like, could he have actually been disguised as Wade? I mean, disguised as Jarrett and went to see Phil at one point in time, but I doubt that. It's probably just like by becoming a person, he's able to download and know everything there is to him, like download all their memories to a certain extent. So that's what that seems like that was kind of implying to me. But that's another angle to this, because I'll be circling back to like the whole Sarah thing. Remember, she had like when he first met her, she had all this glowingness around her, and then also like the fireflies around her. He's just like I don't know whether that's supposed to be like a reflection of like because how he feels about her, or like because even his buddy was saying like, oh yeah, that weird dream you had. It's like, oh yeah, like the skinless animal the trash is like, yeah, it's supposed to be like a metaphor for how super into Sarah that you are. But maybe those other things were kind of like a trickster sign. Like, it makes you wonder, all this stuff Wade's talking about Maggie, maybe it's the exact same thing. Like the way Jarrett would see Sarah sometimes, maybe Wade sees Maggie like that. That's why he means like, oh, it's passion and stuff like that. Because it's like, despite everything, there's still something there. Because when he looks at Maggie, he still sees that much like Jarrett. I don't know. I could be mistaking that. Maybe that means something else. Maybe that's supposed to represent like, hey, maybe Sarah isn't 100% human, or maybe she is, but just, maybe it's a representation of like what he's feeling for her. I don't know. There's so much to kind of chalk up from that. So at the same time, Jarrett's learning from Wade. Oh yeah, I'm a trickster. Your mom's a witch. Sophia and, Maggie are learning that he's a trickster. And it's like, well, what does he want? It's like, well, that's the number one question. We're going to have to find out, what he wants at the end of the day. And because Sophia was talking about, she had learned from like the elders and kind of taken notes, try to learn as much from them before they passed on and took all their knowledge with them. So maybe over the course of the series, we'll kind of get to see, like I said, other supernatural beings, not just tricksters. Maybe, because I'm curious, in this mythology, is it kind of the same thing as, like Norse mythology, or is it different? Like, are tricksters gods? Or are they more like, kind of like how they like foxes being tricksters? Like, is it something more along those veins? Because like Loki's a shapeshifter. I mean, granted, we've seen that in like the MCU. Well, yeah, because he's shapeshifted in the MCU, because I think that's just generally a Loki thing anyway. I mean, maybe that doesn't exist across all mythology. Maybe like the original mythology, maybe that wasn't a thing. I think it is. I don't know. I'm probably reading and thinking too much about it, but this episode sets up a lot of really interesting things. We're at the halfway point because the season's only 6 episodes. So I'm curious to see where everything goes from here. Like I said, we got Georgina and the other two still out there while Jarrett's learning the truth about it. Like, it's like, oh, you're learning so much from your father while your mom is trying to figure out who your dad is and finding a way to try and actually kill him. Because I think it's so fascinating, despite everything, like, she never actually told her mom about the way things, like, because she was like, whoa, Phil's not Jarrett's, because now it makes sense when she was saying, like, oh, wait, he's normal. And she was like, don't go there. I was like, oh, so that confused me later on because I'm like, wait, you didn't know about Wade being something else. But it's like you were referring to whether or not Jarrett presented any witch abilities, which we don't know. Well, I didn't mean to use that pun there. But we don't know what he's presenting, whether it's the trickster side of him or the witch side of him or the combination of the two. Like I said, because with Wade, he's probably presenting more as a... But also, it's like maybe some of the other stuff he's seeing is more the witch side of things. Maybe the stuff with Sarah is the witch side of things, much like his mom. Like, it seems, like I said, what she does in his hearing, it seems like that's not normal amongst witches. I'm curious, like, is it like, are there witches amongst their people, or is it just specifically Maggie's family? Like, are they like one of the few lineages of witches still around? Like, is it a long line of witches? I'd assume like it's kind of a blood thing. Like it went from her mom to her mom's mom, so on and so forth, like, back through the ancestry. Or is it just kind of, or they're just kind of, just people amongst their people who can do that. I'm curious, like, how they end up kind of breaking that whole situation down. Like I said, some questions answered, but still more questions arising. And I'm very interested to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.